and right during the war it was. And who's ever heard of having a municipal building on a side street? Usually it's right on the main drag. That's why the municipal building is there, where on Mercer Street, where it is. Because Eugene Morey wanted to build the racetrack, and he wanted to get all the topsoil he could gather to start building.
Good topsoil.
And he built it in 1942 in the war. And they had opening day, and no gas, nobody could get there. He had buses, free buses, go to all these little towns and take anybody who wanted to come in for free. And my mother and my brother and Judy and I, my father of course was overseas, we went the first opening day of the Garden State Park. And it was packed, of course, because of all these buses. But he should have never built it, and it was all built of wood. And they should have never let him do it. But he called the shots, let me tell you, in this township. Not only that, that road that we were on, our house was on the highest point of the road, and still is. But there was a steep hill that went up after our house. It was up on the road and then down again. He didn't want that hill there. He wanted it straight, and he had that taken out, that hill.
So he owned property along Old Cuthbert Road?
Well, he had a syndicate, I think.
Oh.
No, he didn't live there or anything. No. But he owned a lot of ground there.
Well, when they changed the zoning, they increased the value of that property considerably. So whoever did it must have had an interest in.
It was Morey who had it done.
He must have owned some of that property.
He's the one who had it done. He's the one who had it done. Well, he built the Cherry Hill Inn. Do you remember the Cherry Hill Inn?
Yeah.
Well, that was a farm. That was the Worcester farm. And he built that too, and that was quite successful.
What made you think he was corrupt?
Well, he was. I mean, I just knew he was. It's something you can't prove eventually. But he called the shots. When he said jump, they said how high. Mayor Weber was the mayor. Mayor Weber, he had him right in the. Morey had him right in his pocket.
Right.
And they were all together.
So after you bought the house and you found out it's now commercial, you own 10 acres. When did you when did you feel you have to start selling some of your land?
About the 6th year.
Because of the taxes are so high?
Because of the taxes, we couldn't hang on to it. We almost lost it. In fact, we made settlement to sell that land. 4 acres we sold. We made settlement at a bank in Camden, which is no longer in business. And we had gas in the car, but we didn't have 2 cents to rub together. And I went through all the cracks of the furniture, and I managed to get 96 cents together, and that was all the money we had.
Wow.
That was it, when we made settlement.
How much did you get for that land, do you remember?
That place doesn't owe us a dime, by the way. Let me think. $64,000.
And that was what year around?
Let me think.
It was how many years after you moved there that you had to do
That was about 60, maybe 8 years afterwards, about 64, 8.
What did they then? What did they then put on those 4 acres that you sold?
They put on that Severino's warehouse and storage place right there. It's been several things since then.
And had your other neighbors started to sell their land too to commercial?
That's what. Well, at that point, we only had about 10 houses, 10 neighbors, and when we left, and or I left, we had 3, and one was on the corner and still is of Chapel and Old Cuthbert Road, and she was born in that house, and she is now 96 and still living alone in that house. And then across the street, the house was built in 1922, and she lived there all her life.
So your house was the oldest one on the street.
Oh, yeah, all right, 1743. It's really one of the oldest houses in New Jersey, to tell you the truth. Not the only old house.
And when you look back at the old record, did you ever figure out how much land was owned by the people in that house?
600 acres.
So that house...
Originally 600 acres.
And the original owner was who?
Samuel Cole or Coles, it could be either one.
And he owned 600 acres around that house. 600
acres.
But he didn't live in the house, did he?
And that area was called Deer Park, and Deer Park extends still
across the highway. Yeah.
They had Deer Park Fire Company, if you remember that, and Testis Hardware, if you remember that, up there now where it's all built up now. But the reason it was called Deer Park was Samuel Coles had it fenced in with the 600 acres because he wanted to keep the deer within his ground. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Now we do it to keep them out.
Well, I know. But he was a very wealthy man, but he didn't live in the house more than a year himself. Then he rented it out, and it actually, when we moved there, it had 12 different owners over the period of time.
Now, who prepared the nomination to put it on the National Register of Historic Places?
We did. We did the whole thing.
You and Jerry did?
Yeah, 1972.
And did you have any difficulty getting it registered?
No, we didn't, but it was a lot of work to do, though. It really was.
You still have the nomination anywhere around here?
Yeah, I have everything. Yeah, I have all those papers. They're all my tin box I have. But then, of course, we had 2 more children, and our taxes went up and up and up. So we had to sell the other 4 acres. And that was in the back, and it was low ground. And that we got $85,000 for. But you know, the house was $1 million house if it sat in Haddonfield, let's put it that way. But you can't restore a house unless you've got buku bucks, I'll tell you right now. And yet I think, considering the condition it was in when we bought it, my husband did a wonderful job. He really did. Well, you saw the kitchen.
Yeah.
You saw it. And, I mean, he did everything. He did everything. And when we moved there, he had taken all the doors of the house off, the Italian guy, and made arches of the doors. Italian arches. But fortunately, he didn't throw them away. He piled them in the back. He piled them in the back, and they were completely covered with vines and all kinds of stuff, but that preserved them, and we put them back again. But Jerry had to redo the framework.
But Charlotte, you said that even though I know one of your uncles was in the antique business or new antiques,
my uncle was a very good antique.
Taught you a lot about it, but you said that you got your start by purchasing antiques for your house, your own house, or how did you get started in the business of?
Well, in those days you could go to yard sales and buy wonderful things.
So that's how you got started?
Well, I was always interested in antiques. I think I told you about that Sunday school picnic I went on when I was 10.
No.
Well, they had a Sunday school picnic up in Medford at the Houdow Estates, that's what it's called now. Little development. But there was an 18th century house up there, brick, and it's still there, it's small. And apparently people who were members of the church, they had some ground. They're the ones who had the picnic. And I remember going up there with my family, not my father, because he was always away, and I had to go to the bathroom, and they let us go inside and go to the bathroom. And when I went in there, I was only 10. I don't even know whether I was 10 or not. I wasn't any older than that. I went in that house, and I thought instantly, I want a house like this. This is the kind of house I want. And I thought it instantly, that was the house I wanted to live in. One like that. So then, as I say, my grandfather used to take me to auctions and stuff like that. He often clerked at auctions. And I remember one time, he had some business to do with the people by the name of Champion, which are right at the point of the where the Wilhan's is, Wilhan's the nightclub, and right there in the, what is the name of that road? I can never remember it.
Green Tree.
Green Tree Road. Green Tree Road. And Champions had an 18th century house there, and they also had a little, they called it the Deer Park Inn. There was a bar and restaurant. But they didn't farm anymore. They had sold that back ground. And my grandfather had some business dealings with him, with antiques, and he brought me with him. And I looked around, I thought, boy, this is really neat. I just thought the house was so great. I didn't go in, but I went outside. It just was something about that 18th century house that I love. Is he off?
Leave it?
No, I'm trying to turn around.
Oh.
What's he doing?
He's turning around.
He's turning around.
Oh.
Sure.
But
You're talking about the Champions Inn.
yeah, and I just, and then they sold that, and that's when they, not Wilhan's, they sold it to somebody else. They had a big nightclub there, and then that guy went bankrupt, and Wilhan's bought it. No, it was, I'll tell you what it was a pizza place, a big pizza place, expensive place. They're all over the world. We made them too. What was the name of that pizza?
I don't know, but so you started to go out to buy antiques for your house.
Yeah, yard sales.
And when did you actually get your first job where somebody hired you to do an appraisal for them?
Well, now that, see, I was actually in the business myself of selling antiques, buying and selling, and doing shows. And I did that up until I was about 35.
So you started doing that when?
Oh, gosh.
When you were in the apartment in Cherry Hill, or after you moved into your house?
When we moved here. Well, I couldn't do very much, not with 4 kids running around. But I did what I could.
And how did you get your first consulting job or appraisal job?